Hello. As a replacement for the meeting today, this video is going to supplement that, and we will hopefully get your questions answered, at least get you thinking about some things. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started right away. So again, this is the January 2022 meeting for middle school assessment coordinators. Originally scheduled for the 19th of January. We're going to have to change that a little bit. We'll still hold the meeting, but it will be more like an open office hours so that you can address any questions that you have to Sarah Wallner, who will be available at that time. Since I'm going to be subbing in schools, that is not going to be possible for me to attend this meeting. So what are we going to cover in this meeting? First of all, obviously, welcome. Appreciate you. And as we move forward, I appreciate everyone and their focus and their attention to the details that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how to finish up access testing. We're also going to be focusing on the forward exam preparation. We're a little ways out yet from that, but we still need to prepare to ensure that we have as smooth of a assessment administration as possible. Given that, let's get started. Please talk to each other. If you have questions, connect with each other, connect with us. We always work better when we work together. We're going to try and get you as many resources as possible, focusing on what are the big rocks, so to speak, what are the most important resources, and then filing down from there. So let's move right away into finishing up the access assessment for the year. First of all, I want to say thank you very much. I do appreciate the hard work that has gone into getting this as far as progressing as far as we've gotten. The month of December was huge. We had 65% of our students completed access testing, those who we expected to test, 65% completed prior to the winter break. Considering that we went from the 1st of December through the 17th, that's huge. That's amazing. Congratulations and kudos to you and your team and everyone in your building that made that possible. So let's talk about finishing up then. First of all, we're going to work on finishing those that have started. So make sure that if a student started, if at all possible, get them to complete the assessment. I will be sending out one more list so that you can double check. If it says that a student is in progress and that you have a thought that the student is finished, here are a couple things that that we've learned. First of all, they may not have pressed submit. So that could be one issue. So go in and you can check out whether the student is finished by clicking on submit. That has happened for several students. Also, we found that students who are in the speaking component, if they do not listen to the directions for the full amount of time, so you have to listen to all the directions before you actually start, it will lock up the question. It will not allow you to continue to the next question, and you will not be able to complete it. So one of the tricks is make sure that the students actually listen to the entire direction set. Now, as far as students who are quarantined, who are ill and not able to finish up, do the best we can. So when they come back, then finish up, but we need to focus on completing those who've already started. For those students that are virtual from the Madison Promise Middle School, for instance, they need to also test. So you need to invite them if you haven't already. I've heard from some people that the families are not responding. So here is how I would move forward on that. If you don't get any response, assume that then that is a decline to test. Please document this and send that in an email to myself or to Sarah Wallner, and we will take care of recording that on the AMS software. If a student does come in and get started, but then chooses not to, at least they've started and we'll go with that. Now, because of the changing pandemic and the world conditions, I just want to let you know that DPI is going to announce whether or not they are going to have an extension on access. We know that Most of the state is already done. But that doesn't mean that we, for instance, or other school districts aren't running into some concerns. It's also been shared with me that the new leadership at DPI is really looking to get as close to 100% of students completing the assessment as possible. As we know, that's always our work. And so we need to make sure that we have the opportunity to provide the opportunity to students to complete their work. So what do we need to do in the future? We're going to talk in a moment about returning all the paper materials to either myself or to Sarah at Doyle. We need to receive it. Don't ship it, but we need to receive it by the end of the day on February 2nd. Also, because of this kind of gray area, DPI has informed me that we have online testing for sure through the 4th of February, which is a Friday. That's the week of the 31st. That's an additional week. However, because I don't want us just to continue testing forever, we have put great amounts of effort into doing as much as we have so far. I would like us to wind up testing by the 4th of February. What that means is if you have a new student that arrives, if there's someone that has to take the entire access testing, and you can get it done in the week of the 31st, that's great. Otherwise, we need to continue to work on getting those students who have 1 or 2 domains yet to go during that week. So that's kind of a makeup week, as it were. When you send your materials back, first of all, you are going to be getting back spasm. You're going to be getting an email this coming week about specific instructions for getting all the materials back to us. Here's one that is very helpful that we really would appreciate paying close attention to. We know that written materials, specifically for K, all of K, grades 1, 2, and 3 writing, typically would have a student ID label that is applied to that paper document. If you don't have a label, please make sure that you fill in the boxes across the area where it talks about the name and the demographics, but then also bubble in those bubbles in each of the columns. It takes you minutes to do this, to make sure that it's all complete. Imagine if we had 50 schools returning this kind of material and just Sarah or I having to bubble it, it takes hours. So we would really appreciate if you would just simply make sure that we've complete the bubbling component of that. Okay, questions? Please check in with Sarah or myself. We will try and get you answers as soon as possible. Let's move on to the forward exam. So there are those of you who have been through this many times, and there are those of you who have never been through this. So we're going to kind of take the middle road. We're going to do some of the basics. We're going to talk about this. Forward exam is a state mandated assessment. It is computer-based. It is not computer adaptive. So it is a straightforward test. We must use the Chromebooks. If there are any instances, that's something that has been emailed from student services to us. We work on that with tech services. So must use a Chromebook. eDirect is the software that we use as building assessment coordinators, as district assessment team to help support the online testing. This is from DRC, Data Recognition Corporation, and they are the vendors for this particular assessment. In grades 6 and 7, the assessment is for English language arts and mathematics. So there are 4 sections of English language arts, and I believe there are 3 sections of mathematics. If you're in 8th grade, you add the additional 3 sections of science and social studies, which is new this year. There's a new updated version of the test in social studies, more tightly aligned with the current, brand new social studies standards in Wisconsin. Now, let's talk about a timeline. We know that just like everything else, these forward exams must be given in person. They cannot be given virtually. Here's the background why. The State Department of Public Instruction must report this data to federal government. It has a lot to do with money and the support that we get as individual school districts. Now, one of the requirements says that DPI must sign off and say, make an assurance that all students who took this test were provided their appropriate accommodations per IEP or 504. The state cannot do that if we give this virtually, because we cannot guarantee that each and every student was able to get the appropriate accommodations. This year, the state window opens on March 21st. That's 1 week, the week prior to MMSD's spring break, and it closes on April 29th. When we get back, I believe that's 4 weeks after we get back. So there's a total of 6 weeks. However, 1 week is spring break. And I would suggest that just as we did for access, because it's easier to kind of play catch up at the end with all those students who are missing components, try and at least think about scheduling at least one grade or one content area the week of March 21st to get a jump on that. Again, because we don't know what the future will hold, we don't know what's going to happen after spring break, we do want to make sure that we get as many students tested as possible as soon as possible. Students will still need tickets. We have not gone any further down the road of using ClassLink. So ClassLink will not be available for our students. The tickets will be sent to you sometime around the first week of March, which should give you a couple of weeks to get that ready. We'll talk about what goes into those tickets in just a moment. A couple things for this year. The forward exam is back to its full strength, meaning last year in 2021, there was a shortened version of that. For instance, in English language arts, the text-dependent analysis portion was removed. This year it's back. So please make sure that we take a look at that and focus on what that requires. Keep in mind that this is the section that DPI suggests they would like us to do first. So when you are scheduling things, you should be thinking seriously about getting the text-dependent analysis session done first. Likewise, every single test is now full length, as well as having the TDA. Full length means that all the tests, the questions that they were looking at to see whether or not it will work, which are a couple in each of the content areas, are back in. They removed those last year. They're back in the content areas this year. So we have a full test this year. Things to plan for. First of all, you should start planning for professional development. And this particular slide shows what's on the DPI website for what's called test administrator training. Test administrators are actually just proctors or room proctors, and they're who are administering the test. So that's what their language is. I will put this out on our website and make sure that it's very clear what is needed to do, to be done by February 1st. The PowerPoint slides will be available, etc. Another very important piece to all of this is the security agreements. Now, besides the professional development on proctoring or test administration, there's also one on test security. Need to take a look at each one of those before testing actually begins. Again, if you've been through this more than once or twice, this should be old hat to you. You should be able to go quickly through this and then sign off on the confidentiality agreement. This agreement basically says that you agreed to abide by the rules, no copying, no sharing information, no distributing. You cannot use any of the test items in review in the future. These are all secure tests. This needs to be signed by every proctor or every test administrator / teacher who is going to be giving the test. It needs to be held by the building assessment coordinator for 1 year. So as of this meeting, you can take last year's and shred them. So keep them for a year so that if in case there's ever any questions about security or something happens, we need to be able to access those documents. So please file those away. But please do not send them to me. You need to hold on to those locally. What you do need to send to me is the building coordinator. There's going to be a confidentiality agreement for you as the building coordinator. Again, because you're privy to seeing multiple levels of tests and have access, higher access on the website or on the eDirect software, you need to also sign a confidentiality agreement. Please send that to me. Now, finally, I have to sign one as well. I sign a confidentiality agreement that says, as a district, we are going to be doing this and treating this as a secure test. I send that to DPI. So DPI comes to me, I go to you, you have to connect with the staff. If there's any questions, please let me know. All right, student data is going to be uploaded into the forward, the eDirect really soon. So in fact, as I'm recording this, it's on January 19th, which is tomorrow, the day of our meeting. So the students who are listed as actively enrolled in our district and your buildings at this point, as of tomorrow, today, the 19th, they are the ones that are going to be in the software for forward. Any students who are new to the district, or transfers between schools, etc., all the different combinations of things that can happen will need to be added. This is something that you can let us know. We work hard, Sarah especially works hard to ensure that the rosters are up to date. But please make sure you let us know if there are some changes. We know that the assessment opens in not 1, but 2 months. So that's 8 weeks of time, and there's a lot of changes that can happen. We're trying to keep on top of it so that when it comes time for you to test on that day, that everything works as smoothly as possible. Now, when we talk about accommodations and supports, keep in mind that the forward actually is a little different than some other tests. It has 3 levels of accommodations and supports, tools that are used to help students understand and be able to achieve on the test. The first of them, something called a universal tool. Universal tools are those that are always on and that they are for all students. Each and every student has access to that. Something like a highlighter, something like a line reader, something like on-screen magnification. These universal tools can be one of 2 what I call flavors, the embedded universal tool or the non-embedded. Non-embedded means it is not in the software. Embedded means it has to be turned on and in the software. So for instance, a digital highlighter is an embedded universal tool. A frequent breaks or small group setting is not embedded. It is something that is physical, that has to be done physically within the setting for the administration of the test. So the difference between embedded and non-embedded lies in where is it? Is it physical or is it in the electronic universe? The second kind of accommodation or support is called a designated support. This does not require an IEP. This does not require a 504. However, it does require a teacher recommendation. This is not to say that these tools are for all students. In fact, these are tools that provide support that are commonly and often given and used regularly in the classroom. They could be embedded. They could also be non-embedded. So again, a non-embedded might be if a student leaves and goes in a small group in order to take a test, that would be an example of a non-embedded designated support. If, however, someone reads material to a student on every test, then that would be cause for an embedded designated support, which we'll get to in just a moment. Finally, accommodations. Those are required to have an IEP that specifically lists what the accommodation is, or a 504, which does the same thing. And once again, these should be used regularly in the classroom. Students should not walk into a test and have tools that they never have available to them, even though it's a digital test versus a physical, real experience. We don't want students to have to learn tools at the same time that they're actually taking a test and trying to perform well. So let's take a look at this again. Number one, there are 3 levels of support or accommodations on the forward test. Number 2, we have both embedded and non-embedded versions of each of these accommodations. And the third point here is that this requires a lot of time to get this into eDirect, because we have to then touch every student's record who has any kind of change to their testing administration environment. So this must all be done prior to getting you tickets and distributing them. So there's a lot of work that has to happen quickly. So we will be providing you a timeline. Make sure that you please adhere to that, because it really, just given the current situation of at least myself being out and subbing in the schools, that cuts down on what we can do as a team in central office to get this done. So the process, first of all, we will pull the IEP and 504 accommodations from OASIS and put that into a list of student that you will be expecting to test. You will have this information about students with IEPs or 504s, as well as students with supports for ELLs. Those will be to you by February 4th. This list will contain current ELLs at your school, what the appropriate supports are. It will also contain the list of students who have current IEPs, as well as what their supports are. What you need to do is look that over to ensure that no one is missing, and once again, just as we did with Access, make sure that there are no open IEPs, that there is really the correct level of support for each student. What you need to do again is work with each grade level team. Because there is the designated support category, it would really be what happens in the normal classroom, the regular classroom day. So for instance, a thing that we've been working with over the last few years, striving readers and text-to-speech. Text-to-speech, first of all, will read the directions, and it will read the prompts in most cases, and it will read the questions and answers. That's kind of nice if that is a support that a student actually needs and receives on a regular basis. So again, if you have questions, go back to the classroom teacher. Does the student get regular support from a person reading the instructions to them? If the answer is no, then it would seem to me that it makes sense to not give that particular support, because again, it would be a distraction. And if it's not something a student uses regularly, it won't really be helpful to them. Our timeline, you'll get this by February 4th, is to return this about 2 weeks later, so approximately February 18th. So you get the list with instructions and what to do. Last thing about the forward exam that is often a question is, how do students log in? So again, students log in through their Chromebook. It does not work with ClassLink, period. So from the Chromebook login page, you have to back out, and next month we'll go over some strategies for ensuring that the Chromebooks will work. But you need to back out from this, and it will allow you then, before a student signs in, to choose on the lower left-hand side, the app menu. Here's an example of a Chromebook with an app menu. You'll see that it has DRC Insight Online Assessments is the first one. That is the one that you need to select. And yes, it is the same one that we use for access testing. Here's the difference though. You may or may not be given options. If you are given the option of which test to do, and it'll look like in the bottom left-hand corner of this slide, please select the Wisconsin version. Click on that button, and that will take you to the opening section for the forward exam. That's where you will need to have student username and password. Okay, a lot of these resources will be over the next couple weeks put onto our MMSD forward exam website. That's linked here in the slide deck. So if you have the slides, you can certainly take a look at that. Family letters are going to be translated, and they hopefully will be ready in early February. My guess is that they won't be, simply because, well, there's two reasons. Number one is we're doing major changes. We're trying to ensure that people understand the importance of taking the forward exam. We're also, I would urge you not to send the letters more than 2 weeks ahead of time. So that means the letters shouldn't even go out until at the earliest, the 7th of March. So please make sure that we'll be in contact with you. We'll make sure that we get all the letters to you. They will be translated, but I just want you to start thinking about this. I'm going to pause there. So if you have any questions, please jot them down so that you can ask when you actually get a live person, or email us. All right, a couple other things. ANET, so you know there is an additional week on the window. We've added that. It closes on January 28th. So this week as well as next week. Because I'm out of the office and because of the circumstances, please don't hesitate to email either Sarah or I about support on ANET, but understand that we might not be able to get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. So please connect with the achievementnetwork.org. So it's help@achievementnetwork.org. They are pretty good about getting back to you as quickly as possible. All right, now, a couple things. First of all, opting out of testing. This must again be in writing. We're really trying to encourage that families do not opt out of the test. DPI is pushing for 100% of students testing. We recognize that there are choices that families make, and I respect those. But please, this is an important assessment that does affect schools. It does affect the district, and it affects a lot of things. So send the documentation to our office. Please forward that to us. Keep in mind that the opting out is only good for 1 year. And as I said, it has effect on all our schools, but ultimately it's the students who lose out. We don't have information on them, especially after this pandemic year. We don't have information on them, how they're doing, and what is needed to actually recover fully as we move forward through time. So every Monday and Wednesday from 2 to 3 are office hours. I will not be in attendance. Sarah will be available at that time. I will not be in attendance till I am no longer subbing. But also I will be around this Friday at 1 p.m. I'll send a link out to everyone so that if you have a question about any of the things that you saw in this video or other things, you can certainly drop by and ask that. As always, we're here to support you. So contact myself, Sarah Wallner, or if you have data use questions, please connect with Nicole Schaefer. And so that's it for today. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you. I appreciate your attention, and best wishes. Stay healthy. And I appreciate all the hard work that's going on in each and every school. Thank you.